Hi guys, my name is Mohit Singh, and today we'll be looking at LeetCode question 20, valid parentheses. In this question, we've been given a string, and it only contains the characters open brackets and close brackets in three different styles, and we want to determine whether the string that's been given to us is valid. Now, to define valid, we want to make sure that the open brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets. So if it's a curly bracket, it needs to be closed by a curly bracket, and if it's square, it needs to be closed by a square bracket. Now, we want to make sure also that the open brackets are closed in the correct order. So for example, they need to be back to back. So if it's a curly bracket, it needs to be closed immediately by a closing curly bracket. And so we can't mismatch them. So we can't do open parentheses, open curly, close parentheses, close curly. That is incorrect. So we want to make sure it looks like this, and if we ever had a case where they aren't matching, we want to return false. So another thing we want to keep in mind is that in this string, it can't contain any other characters other than these 6, and that's why to solve this prompt, we're going to be using a dictionary. So I already typed this dictionary out, but it basically looks like this. So we'll just call it brackets, and in brackets we have close parentheses, open parentheses, curly brackets, close curly brackets, and the square brackets. Now you might notice that this looks a little weird because we have the closing parentheses before the open parentheses, and there's a reason to that, and we'll get to that later on when we start utilizing brackets in our code. So now we're gonna make a list called open brackets, and we'll just initialize it. So the way we determine or how we're going to determine whether or not the string is valid or not is that we're going to return whether or not open brackets is empty or not. So open. So we're going to return, if it's empty, we're going to return true, and if it's not, it's going to return false because this is a Boolean statement on its own. Now, well, how do we actually go through and decide that? Is that if we find a value that's opening a new bracket, we're going to append it to open brackets, and then if we see a closing bracket right after, we're going to pop that value out. So it's going to do the same thing. It's going to check if it's opening, add it, closing, pop it, open, append, close, pop, and then it just does that over and over again. And let's say one value was not closed, it's going to stay in open brackets, and then it's going to see that it's not empty, it's not just an empty list, and it's going to return false. Now if things go according to plan, it's going to return true. So now let's actually get to coding that. So now we want to go through each character in the string we've been given. So for char in S is our string. Now here's where we have our if statements. So first we're going to go over appending it. So if the character is in brackets values, so if it is in brackets values, then we want to append that to open brackets. So that's how we're going to append it. So if it sees that it's in a value, then we're going to append it. And if not, we're going to do an elif statement that says if there is something currently in open brackets, so we do that by just writing open brackets. So elif open brackets, that could be a statement on its own, but there is something else we want to add here. So we're going to use the and statement or word. And we're going to add another conditional, and that's going to check if brackets of char is equivalent to the last value in open brackets. So -1. Now in this case, basically why we're checking this is that if the key, like the value we're on, so like let's say we're in example 2, and we see the open parentheses. The first time through, it's going to go to this if statement, see that it's in the values of brackets, and it's going to append that character to open brackets, our list. Now on the second loop through, it's going to see the closing parentheses. It doesn't work in the if statement, so it checks the elif statement. So it's going to realize that there is currently something in open brackets from the first iteration, and it's going to check if brackets of care. So putting in the dictionary, which is currently the closing bracket, we get the curly bracket because that's the value to that key. It checks if this is the same as the last value currently in open brackets, which yes, it is, because that is the same as what we currently have from the first iteration in our list. And if it is true, then we are going to simply pop the value that we just put in open brackets. So open. So in case you didn't understand what I just said, basically this is just checking through the values and keys to make sure that we currently have nothing in open brackets. Because if things go correctly, it's going to identify an open parentheses on the first iteration, and then it's going to find the second parentheses on the second iteration, and then it's going to remove that value from open brackets. In that way, there is nothing in open brackets at the end of this. And we want to return another statement, because if anything does not fit those two requirements, we want to immediately just return false, because nothing else, it just won't work. So now this should be the completed code. Let me just make sure it works. Oh, sorry, we're missing parentheses. Yep, let's submit it. Okay, yeah, so the code works. So yeah, it's pretty much it. We just use a dictionary. We're using the keys and values to check if there's anything in open brackets, and then we just return whether or not the list is empty or not. If it's empty, it's true. If not, it's false. So it's pretty simple, just difficult to understand. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.